Thank you everyone for joining us today. I'm here with a pretty fantastic group of chefs and restaurant owners and human beings to talk about an issue that has been around for years, but they've really started to address in a very organized fashion in the last year or two. We're here to talk about how the restaurant industry needs to change, frankly, so that women and mothers can thrive in it. And when we say thrive, we mean, maintain senior level and ownership positions. And we also mean just frankly, stay in the industry. My name is Chandra Ram. I'm a food writer and author and someone who has spoken with many of our panelists today about this topic, but I'm excited to learn more. So I want to go ahead and go down our list and have them introduce themselves one by one, and then we'll get things going. Sarah, do you want to start?
Yes, thank you. I'm Sarah Stegner from Prairie Grass Cafe. I'm one of the founding members of the Abundant Setting, and I feel that it's been a really empowering experience to help the individuals try and reach their goals. And these women that are working in the industry and mothers are pretty amazing people. And it's been just a process this year to connect with them, and pretty amazing.
Great. Darnell?
Hello, everyone. My name is Darnell Reed. I'm the executive chef and owner of Luella Southern Kitchen in Lincoln Square. I have two little girls, a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old. I too am happy to be part of the Abundant Setting. And one thing for me one reason that it's important for me is because I grew up for many years of my life. My mom was a working single mom. So.
Right, thank you. Julie.
Hi, sorry, I had to find my unmute button. Hi, everyone. My name is Julie Matha. I am the co-owner of Hune Bakery in Evanston, Illinois. We've been in business for about 8.5 years, which feels like 300 after the past 18 months. I am a mom of a 28-year-old, a 16-year-old, a 13-year-old, and a stepmom to a 14-year-old. So we have a lot going on in our house right now. But the nice thing is they're relatively self-sufficient at the moment, whereas when I first started this, they were not. So definitely challenges with running a business and keeping it going and being a mom. So very honored to be here. Thank you for including me.
We're honored to have you. Becca, you want to say hello?
Hi, my name is Becca Grothy. I am a kitchen manager at Honey Butter Fried Chicken, and I am currently working on opening my own sandwich shop in the Avondale neighborhood. I was a recipient of the Abundant Setting, so I got to kind of see it from the other side. And I am extremely grateful and thankful for everything that they are doing and did for me.
Great. And Deanna.
Hi, everyone. I am Diana Davila. I am the chef owner of Mi Tocaya Antojeria, mother of 2. My daughter is 10, my son is 7, and I'm really happy to be a part of the Abundant Setting. I would say that it really hits close to home just because I really felt really alone when I was pregnant both times. You would think it got better the second time, it didn't. And so for me, really, it's, I want to contribute in any way that I can because it's very difficult, very, very difficult.
No, we appreciate you supporting this. Rick, can you come on and say hello?
Yes. Hello, everyone. I'm Rick Bayless. I, with my wife, opened Frontera Grill 34 years ago. I was raised in a restaurant and a restaurant that was there for 37 years. So I'm sort of keeping in that same kind of tradition. I have always, I was always raised in a very welcoming atmosphere that was very diverse, and I have tried to follow that same pattern in my own restaurants. And I know that's not the norm for a lot of people, but I think this is I'm thrilled that this is a topic that is now starting to be discussed a lot more, because it's been something that I've been very passionate about for a really long time.
Great. And Beverly, last but not least.
Hi, everyone. And first of all, thank you everyone for joining, the panelists and moderator. I know how extremely hard and difficult to even spend this time here. So I'm so appreciative, and Dwell Social for using your platform for us to have this discussion. Yeah, I am the founder of the Abundance Setting, which we founded in the midst of the pandemic. But what we are addressing is some shocking statistics. So more than 50% of women graduate from culinary schools, but only 6 to 7% ever make it to executive chef or like chef owners. A shocking statistic. So we really need to ask ourselves, why don't women come to what are the systemic issues, why women don't rise to the top and thrive at the top? The Me Too movement 4 years ago, also, we question about our sexist work culture that often happens not in our kitchens, but like it happens in very much so a lot of kitchens. And that needs to be addressed. And then now at the pandemic, the stakes are very high, with the highest dropout of women out of every industry. 4 times as much as men have dropped out of the workforce, citing childcare issues as a major crisis, and especially to women of color. And there has just never been a more important time to address these issues about family, forward work culture, gender inequity issues as it relates, and lack of childcare as it relates to the restaurant industry. And we hope that this is a really invigorating discussion for everyone here. And yeah, I'm just really blessed to have you, and I'm very excited to hear you talk. I have 3 children. One is 11, one is 4, and one is 2. I waited 7 years because I thought it was just too crazy to have a second one. In this industry, I know firsthand how incredibly alone it feels and incredibly difficult it is, especially working nights, weekends, long hours, and in proportion to other industry, maybe lower in wages. And so I'm very excited that we can address some of these issues so that we can correct them and have solutions for the future, for our future generations.
Oh, thank you. I'm so appreciative of the work that you're doing. And I'd actually love if Beverly, you and Sarah can talk a bit about Abundance Setting and what you want to accomplish, why you started it and what you wanted to accomplish with it, and the programs that you have available, just to kind of kick things off, especially for people who may not be familiar.
Oh, okay,
You go.
Okay, so yeah, so we are creating a community because there are lack of supports and communities for working moms in the culinary community, culinary and hospitality industry. And we don't have all the answers yet. We're creating a lot of discussion around that. As coming through the pandemic, we did what we thought we could do with our own hands, was actually cook meal relief. And so we dropped off for 3 months for our recipients, 3 meals a week made by rotating chefs. Me, Chef Sarah, and Debbie were the pilot round, and Chef Darnell was on the second round with Chef Izard and Chef Sarah from Monteverde. And in doing so, we hope to accomplish quality of life back at home, time for the women to reorganize themselves or get some self-care, access to nutritious food, and for the children to have access to the education, because who can, at this point, like like you can't really invest tons of money to going out to eat during this time, and creating a community of support and mentorship and resources through our network. So I think the three pillars are mainly supporting through meal relief and mentorship and creating a community where you have people who have your back and resources and a community that supports you. And then hopefully in the future, we're dealing with a restaurant template. Maybe we can create a better restaurant template that takes more work, and a little bit like a long-term goal is to work on how we can shape it for better and advocate for better. But for now, we are also just addressing what we're dealt with.
Yeah, and for me, the things that really stood out with Abundant Setting, we had conversations and continue to have them about how we got to where we are and what were the underlying factors that supported us in making it with these shocking statistics that Beverly was talking about. And one of them is that we both had access to mentors. And I felt that that was really important, that we offer that to every woman that is in the kitchen, that they should be able to reach out and have access to a network of people that can really help guide and support them. And we are all on the Beard Platform Mentorship under the Abundant Setting heading, that people could use that to get to us, but also our own recipients in the Abundant Setting have access to the mentorship of all the chefs. They're not just cooking for them, they're spending time with them and listening to what they need and offering guidance and support. So I felt that was really important, and I didn't want to leave out that part of this is the education of where to find local food and working with farmers. And that we sent each of the women CSA that actually Chef Bruce Sherman set up, that is 5 women chefs that are 5 women farmers that are supplying the CSA. And so they received that this year so they could really understand what seasonality is, because this is one of the advantages that my restaurant has, that I have access to local food and it's delicious and it makes my job easier by using what's in season and what is at its best. And I want those women to have that advantage going forward, that they would already have established an understanding of how to work with farmers and then have access. So this is something I'm passionate about, and I wanted to make sure that that got passed on and they also have those advantages. So those were 2 factors that I thought were really important. And then let me just say, as an aside, one of the most difficult things about being a chef in this industry is often the isolation when you're a mother, that you think you have to do it on your own completely, and you try and figure out how to get help, and it's consuming. And I wish that I had had that kind of support, or somebody that I could have asked, what do I do? How do I do this? And I was lucky that I had a woman came forward that's a friend of the family's to support me on this, but it's challenging.
Well, Sarah, and you and I, you and I spoke about this when I interviewed you and Beverly about Abundant Setting and the work that you're doing for a piece that's in the new issue of Plate Magazine. But one of the things that really struck me was the fact that for you, I thought for you as the executive chef of a major hotel, you would have more resources. That you would, you were somewhere where they had the ability to, the financial ability to, provide backup, to give you leave when you needed, and things like that. And you actually said that it wound up being easier for you to become a chef owner. And every one of our panelists here is a chef owner. Becca is in the super fun part of ownership where she's trying to get open. But I want to kind of throw out the question to everybody here. What was, did you have a similar experience where you realized that you needed to work for yourself in order to balance family and your work?
Chandra, before that other people answer that, let me just say too, that a big part of that was me not feeling confident that I would be able to get the help that I needed and speak up. It wasn't that all the resources weren't there, but that I really was insecure about what that would do to my reputation or take my eye off the restaurant to have to ask over and over again for help. And the hotel did come through, but it was a lesson that I needed to learn to ask for help.
And I think that's such a great point, because that is something that women, that many women have to overcome. It's just the fact that you need to like raise your hand and say, hey, I'm going through this. I'm going to need backup and support, and, sort of like not be the hero and suck up everything. But any of our other panelists, was there a point when you kind of realized, okay, this is actually going to be more doable if I'm my own boss, or what were your experiences like? Yeah, Deanna.
I think that's kind of 100% of the reason why I ended up opening up my own place. I actually was someone who didn't want to have their own restaurant. I wanted to be part of a group where I could grow, and really because my parents owned restaurants, and I just saw how difficult and the sort of strain that it takes. And I thought it would be easier. But then once I started, once I was pregnant, had a child, and then again, and I saw just how much, it's just so incredibly demanding when you're opening up a restaurant. I was pregnant when I was opening up both my children. I was opening up a restaurant with both of them, not Mi Tocaya, just a different, where I was the chef. Just, it's so much work. It's incredibly taxing. And then, it didn't, the last job that I had, it didn't work out. And I knew how much I had put in there, and I just couldn't see myself doing that again for somebody else. And I just didn't think that it was going to happen, and I thought to myself, well, I think that if I'm going to be able to if I want to keep being a chef, I'm going to have to do it on sort of my own terms, because this way I will be able to make my own schedule, say who, when, how. I could create my own environment, because I really just didn't see it happening the other way around. And it's not like if there was, in my experience, when I was interviewing, every interview that I've had, I've always had the questions of if I was married, if I was planning on having children, what was my time frame, or things like that. And you could tell that they were, I knew I wanted to have children, but I never really had a plan when or how. So it's like, how do you answer those questions? You already feel like, I don't know, it's hard to explain, just even telling your employer that I was so scared both times telling that I thought that I was going to be let go or like let them down. And I also didn't have really anybody to talk to about it. I didn't know any other women chefs that were executive chefs that were pregnant or that had gone through it. Or, I remember even searching late at night on the internet, like looking up executive chef, pregnant chefs, or, and really like, because I really want, I didn't even feel, and it's a different life. A lot of my female friends, they don't they're not in this industry. And so, they have sort of more, I don't want to say regular, it sounds, but like 9 to 5, 9 to 6, give or take, like those kinds of
Mhm.
jobs. So it's just really hard to relate to some people because I wasn't ready to give up. I mean, I wanted to be a chef. I wanted to create. And so I didn't want to give that up. And sometimes that even makes me feel terrible about myself, so yeah, it's really difficult.
And you're bringing up some, you're bringing up some pretty heavy stuff. I mean, one that you should absolutely not feel guilty for still wanting to be a chef and be creative and be a business owner and through your work also give back to the community in such a tremendous way. And you're also bringing up what a horrific moment to be sitting in a job interview and have someone ask you when you plan on having children, because that question is wildly inappropriate and illegal. And just, I mean, what an awful position to put anyone in. I'm so sorry that you experienced that. And it kind of brings up some of the things. I mean, we always talk about restaurants and how restaurant life is different. And yes, there's some things that will never change. It will always take place on, nights and weekends, and it will always have some of these things, but there are certainly ways we can improve it and make it different, make it better for people. Becca, I know you were when you found out you were expecting, you were in a different employment situation. Certainly like a different expectations in that. Do you want to tell a bit about, what your workplace offered?
Yeah, I actually found out I was pregnant about a little over 3 years ago. And a couple weeks before I found out I was pregnant, me and my two business partners, Josh and Christine, who are the owners of Honey Butter Fried Chicken, had decided that we were going to do a pop-up at Revival Food Hall starting the following April. So I was due in at the end of June or early July, and our pop-up would have been 3 months. So we would have ended right about the time that I was supposed to be giving birth. So, we had just decided that we were going to do that. And then I found out I was pregnant. So I had to tell Josh and Christine, hey, I'm pregnant. Do you still want to do this? And, I'm very fortunate in being able to work with them. And they are probably the most accommodating and understanding human beings and bosses and restaurant owners on the planet, and they were like, yeah, let's do this. So we just kept right on, and then we opened our little pop-up in Revival in April, and then we closed it at the end of June, and then I gave birth 2 weeks later. So very exciting time.
Did they have, aside from being understanding, did they have policies in place that you felt would help you in this,
Yes.
in this massive change in your life?
Yeah, absolutely. They have always offered extremely generous benefits for their employees. We get paid maternal and paternal leave. So I got 3 months paid leave, and my husband, who is also works at Honey Butter, he got 3 months paid leave after me. So that allowed us to take 6 months of paid leave for both of us when we first had the baby. Before we even had to think about a daycare or childcare or anything, we got 6 full months to bond and spend time with our new baby. So, and they're very understanding with our schedules. We, sort of kind of make our own schedule where we work opposite. So we both have time we have like 1 day a week together as a family. And then we have days where he works in the morning and I work at night, or he's off and I work, or that kind of stuff. So we're pretty fortunate to be able to sort of create a schedule that works for our life.
And Julie, do you want to share a little bit about your experience there at Hune?
Sure. I mean, mine is very, very, very different because I was a high school guidance counselor for many years, which I got to tell you comes in very handy with HR. Just saying. But
that's good prep.
Use those skills every day. And Ellen, my partner, both in work and in life, so she was a classically trained chef. So she was used to working restaurant hours, you know, prior to opening the bakery. But when we opened Hune together, not really knowing what we were getting into at that time, you know, our kids were very, very young. And I think that I probably is what kind of brought us together at some level, right? But I think that, you know, having our kids super young at the time, but being that we were both in the business, what allowed us to survive it and get through it together, because we could manage our schedules accordingly and we could cover for each other. And now that our kids are older, in many ways it's easier, in some ways it's harder. But, you know, I think that the challenges we as women business owners face, you know, I know we're talking about one topic in particular here in terms of, you know, what it means like when you have kids and things like that, but just the overall challenges as women business owners trying to get, you know, financing and loans and being taken seriously. I think that those were very eye-opening to me when I started this business with her, because I hadn't really tangibly experienced that in my previous career. And if I did, it was very below the surface, pretty deep, like I hadn't seen any of that. And so I think seeing the sort of these inequities and different expectations is really interesting, even with my own staff. To just say one kind of funny story, this is a few years ago, I had a woman baker, she was our overnight baker, and she was just this unbelievable woman. And she was pregnant and with her second baby, and she did not want to take any time off until she gave birth. I mean, she was totally committed to just staying there. It reminds me kind of what you're saying, Becca. And I had to kind of remind my male bakers, like, you might not want to have her pick up the 80-pound bags of flour. Do you know that she's pregnant? I think, hello. And it was just such a funny interaction because they didn't really see it, which I guess was good in a way, but also I'm like, come on guys, wake up. So just kind of seeing some of these different gender roles and how it's all kind of so different in the food business. And, you know, being kind of told by your banker that your spreadsheets are cute. That was a big eye opener to me when that happened, when we were applying for our, and, you know, or being called, oh, you girls. I'm like, this was a few years ago. I'm in my 40s. I don't think I'm a girl, but whatever. So, you know, little things that these little kind of slights that some of these people aren't even intending on doing that. But I do think the pressure of being a mom in this business is different than it is in many other businesses. You know, and at Hune, we've really tried to put in a lot of benefits for our staff. Parental leave is one that is the next one that we're working on. We've got all the insurance covered and everything else, and the paid time off and all of that. But, you know, it's a big step as an independently owned restaurant, bakery in our case, to kind of get to that point.
Yeah, for sure. I would love to hear, like, Darnell and Rick, what your experiences are, you know, as fathers who are trying to parent as well as run restaurants, and, you know, as two people I know to be incredibly supportive of women in the industry. Darnell, do you want to start?
Okay. Well, actually, so my personal experience right now, you mean just as a father in the industry, my personal experience that I can say that I'm going through daily now, especially with kids being back in school and things like that, I will never say that I know how hard it is for the women, but I just know how hard it is to balance the work-life relationship. So, like, for example, I can take you through a Wednesday for me. So Wednesday, and this is I only use Wednesday because it's the day that one of my kids has early dismissal. So basically, you get up in the morning, I bring one of my daughters to school, which is by my house, which is very close to where I live, Belmont Cragen. Then I'll drop off the second one over here, which is near Luella's, which is Ravenswood. Then in between, I try to get a little bit of work done. And then at 1 o'clock, I have to go back to my house to pick up the 6-year-old. And by 2 o'clock, back to Ravenswood to pick up the 3-year-old from school, then drop them both off back at home. And after dropping them off back at home, come back to work. So I'm doing a lot of juggling, work-life balance. And that's all I can say as far as from my experience, as far as working to balance. And I'm sorry, but in between that, making meals for them to bring to school, lunch for school, and things like that. But aside from myself, one thing that I wanted to say was it probably was obvious, but just listening to Diana, I think during those interviews, they were looking for a reason to eliminate her. Basically, just to ask, hey, when do you expect to have kids or things like that? Because I do think, and I know it wasn't your question, but I just was thinking about this, listening to this, and also some of my experiences from working in hotels. I think a lot of the problem is the male ego, because I have worked with, I could say at least one chef in particular, and there's probably even more, but it's one that I thought about just listening to this conversation, that he was the chef, but he literally quit a job because the food and beverage director that just got hired was a woman. And he wasn't going to work for a woman. So he left and went to go work at another hotel. Didn't give her a chance, So I think just from overall myself working in the industry, it also brought me to another conclusion. Through my entire career, I have been asked to mentor people. I mentored male cooks. I mentored female cooks. I've even mentored people who were not particularly, because I work in the hotel industry, were not particularly in my department either, but just in the hotel industry. But I haven't seen many situations where a female was asked to mentor a male. So I'm starting to think that that's part of the problem that we have in the industry, is just guys not wanting to actually work for women. And I can say also that at least myself personally, Beverly, Diana, Sarah, and even though I know that the other chef Sarah is not on this call, me personally, I feel like I'm being mentored by them right now, even though they didn't know it, but they'll know it now. So I think that that's part of the problem, is that I think some men cannot accept working for women. And like I said, I know some of it I know just from experience of seeing it, and some of it I just make some, I would say, educated assumptions just based off what I know. So.
No, I mean, having that experience, I thank you for bringing that up. I mean, Rick, you grew up in a restaurant family. You created a family while creating restaurants
Right.
with your wife, and now you've worked with your daughter, of course, to help her create her restaurant, and she has started a family as well, correct?
That's correct. Just 1 year ago, we added to our family. We have a granddaughter now. I find this all very inspiring to me, to listen to all of these different stories. And I guess several things have just sort of come to the surface while listening to everyone talk. I will say that the whole idea of owning your own place gives you the freedom to create the world that you want to live in. I listened to Darnell talk about working with men that wouldn't work for women, or that berated women, or wouldn't mentor women. And I guess I had a pretty amazing mentorship myself, because my father was disabled when I was in high school, and my mother and I took over our family restaurant when I was 16. And my mother, the pit master, I grew up in barbecue. And the pit master was this really old man. And I'm sorry, I'm in a kitchen and it's loud. So please forgive me with the background noise that's going on here and the movement you can see around me. But I will say that my mother hired a female pit master, and we're talking about in the 1960s. So I knew that there was not necessarily a division that had to be made. There might be one in the culture, but it didn't necessarily have to play out in my world. And so I will say that was the model that I worked with. And when Deanna and I, my wife and I, decided to open Frontera, and we opened in 1987, we clearly defined our roles so that each of us would have something that we contributed, that and I had learned this again growing up in a family business, that if anybody tries to cross the boundaries and get into the other person's world, it won't end well. And so it's all about respect. And so I grew up with that kind of thing, and Deanna and I decided that that's the way we were going to work. We would each have our own areas of responsibility. And then when we decided to start a family, which was 4 years after we opened Frontera, we took our office and decided to turn it into a nursery so that we could have our daughter there with us all the time. And then we decided, because we worked nights and weekends, that we were going to create family life that was morning time and then on Mondays, you know? And so we worked really, really strongly. Now I work, but you have to understand, number one, that my wife is like the bionic woman, okay? So she worked until Saturday, had our daughter on Monday, and was back to work by the end of the next week. So she loves the business, and she wanted to bring our daughter into that. So she created space at the restaurant where she could be the mother, and by turning our office into a nursery, but then she could also be free to, as general manager of our restaurant, deal with things and have meetings right outside the door, but still be present for our daughter. Now, I will say that I wish she would speak to all of that, because I have no idea how hard that all was for her, because she gave me, other than the fact that 3 nights a week, when our daughter was little, I cooked the line in Topolobampo with our daughter strapped to my chest in one of those Bjorn carriers. And I didn't do like the deep fry station or anything like that. But I took as much responsibility as I possibly could in all of that, to take that responsibility of minute to minute care when I needed to. But I would just say that I will underscore what so many people have said here, which is that if you want to have this life for yourself, you have to kind of forge it yourself, because right now our culture does not support it. And I will say one other thing that I think is a really important thing to put on the table here. None of us, we're all the chef owners, and we know how incredibly hard it is to make a living in this, and that all of us would love to have all of these really abundant benefits that we offer to all of our staff. We would like to pay our staff more. We would like to have all of this paid time off. But we're barely making ends meet right now. So I have to say, until we can change our culture, and I'm saying that not as our culture changes, but until we can change our culture to respect food more and pay more for food, we will not be able to do that. But we are of the countries, the developed countries that are out there, we spend less on food than any other country. And until we change the culture to help people to understand that they can spend more on their food and it will make for a better culture, we will still be struggling back and forth with trying to make ends meet and always wanting to be able to offer our staff more than we can offer them right now. And I think probably everybody on this call would agree with me that we want to do more, but we still have to actually not go in the red at the end of the month.
Right, right. It's wonderful to be able to say, okay, I'm going to offer all of these benefits, but if it means, hey, you're not going to have a job in 2 months because I just ran my restaurant into the ground, it doesn't work. And, I want to throw it out to everybody on the panel, and I actually can't see everyone, so I don't want to have to call on anyone, just jump in. But what are the ways out of this that you see for, potentially for the restaurant industry? Rick has brought up an incredibly important point that we spend less than any other developed nation on food. And also the United States is notoriously one of the only countries in the world that does not mandate paid parental leave. What are some of the things that our society can do to support chefs and restaurant owners? And I would even expand this to any kind of small business owner who wants to be able to support working parents.
One of the things that I think that Rick said that I want people to really focus in on is that it's the respect for the food and the value of what we are doing. I think that is the leading dynamic that needs to shift, because all of us have the right intentions to take care of our staff and to create a life that is very livable and a positive experience instead of stressed and overworked. And right now we're all trying to balance that in order to protect our staff. So we're in this right now, but the crux of it is, if they value what it is we do and where the food comes from, and they understand that, then their appreciation and level of willingness to support the restaurants will go up. And I think Green City Market in Lincoln Park has been a big advocate for helping people understand where their food is coming from. And I always say that it's the home cook and the gardeners that are our biggest supporters, because they're the people that understand what it takes for us to execute the kind of meals we want to do, and to support the farms that are protecting our land and are preserving the right to have that food in future generations. And I think that, as you see in particularly this fourth quarter, there's going to be some interruption in service in terms of prepackaged foods, and even some of the processed staples. But produce should hold its own. And I hope that the one lesson people can take away from that is that they have a greater respect and value for the food chain and what we offer locally.
I would agree wholeheartedly with everything that Rick and Sarah just said. I mean, I think that we're very lucky to have a very loyal customer base, and they understand why they're going to pay between $7 to sometimes $10 for a loaf of bread. Now, that doesn't mean to say that I'll have newcomers who come in the store and get that sticker shock, and then we have to educate why it costs that much because of where we're sourcing it, the organic ingredients, the labor involved, et cetera, et cetera. That education, I think, for even our loyal customers is so important. Like I put out a monthly newsletter, which I thought was just kind of a throwaway thing before the pandemic. And I realize now that how important that is to educate people. Well, here's why our prices are going up. Here's why you're waiting longer in line for your food right now, because the labor shortage is so intense and it's killing us. I mean, I think I spend half of my day, probably 60% of my day, trying to hire right now, because we don't have an HR person, you're looking at her. So, that respect that you guys spoke about is so important. And I even talked to them about the supply chain disruptions. When we see farms out in Oregon and Washington State literally trying to do the harvest of their wheat with fire raging behind the tractor, and you see the farmer racing to get his crop, harvested, it's so disheartening. But we have to communicate that to people. We have environmental factors, we have economic factors, we have the pandemic, we have the labor shortage. Everything is intertwined. And that supply interruption, interestingly for us, although it affected us in certain ways with certain ingredients going up, like avocados being a big one, right? They like doubled in price a few weeks ago. It's like, you can come to Hune though, and you're going to get that flour. If you want to buy retail flour, you're going to get the bread because I'm sourcing it from a local farmer and I know where my supply chain is. Whereas if it were an item that I'm sourcing from out of the country or what have you, which we don't do, it's a whole different ball game. So I think that all of those things are very well taken. I think we're in a different world right now. I don't think we're going to go back to whatever the normal was before the pandemic. I think it's going to be changing and evolving continuously over time.
Seems like that's such a great point, that the pandemic maybe just pushed everyone to the point of saying like, hey, this has been bad for a while. Now it is horrific. And we cannot, as we build back, we cannot go back to the old model. Any other thoughts from our panel?
I think that I agree with what everyone has said, but I think from a different standpoint, I think that we need to change basically valuing women. I think that we need to work on having that part of our culture. I think that for so long, and a lot of times I see it happen all the time. I've seen it happen all the time, and it's like these little things. It's you're brought up slowly starting to learn that you're inferior because it's in the little things. I'll never forget when I saw the commercial of don't throw like a girl, and I think it was a tampon commercial. And it was all of these little girls when they're toddlers, younger, a little bit older, and you see just how fierce and how they're like, oh, what does it mean to throw a ball like a girl? And they will just throw as fast as you can, as hard, and they're just so rambunctious. And it's the same reaction as the boys as well, and then you go to them being, 12, 13 years old, and you start hearing, what does it mean to throw a ball like a girl? It's, oh, well, you're weak, you're not good, like that, you're not any good. And like, I use that example because it's like that with many things. And if we want to change, we really have to start valuing the woman in your life, and that's really something that I have, when I sort of slowly started realizing these sort of, for a long time, I just kind of put my head down, didn't care if I was the only woman. I was used to it. I didn't listen to what they were talking about. I was there for a reason, to learn and to be the best that I could be. But, I can't tell you how many conversations, or when there was, I wish I would have been a little bit more present, because if I could have been, hey, why are you talking about women this way? Like, it's just a nonstop sort of devaluing women all the time, and it wasn't until I was a lot older that I realized just how much it is embedded into our culture. Even with my husband, he would say things like, hun, or like, I would hear him say this to like on a business call. And I'm like, who are you calling hun? Like, why is that okay? Like, could you imagine if you heard me be like on the phone saying hun? Like, it's just, there's all sorts of levels of this. And I think that this is why we don't have, because our society doesn't really value women, because our culture really doesn't value women, truly, that's why we don't have paid maternal leave, because I guarantee you, if men gave birth, they would most definitely be getting paid paternal leave. It's just, you see it all the time. So I think that we really have to start, like the questions that I've gotten all the time, the looks that I've gotten all the time, and these are the kinds of things that I think that I know that I have definitely kind of sort of realized, and also try to do what you can to change. Every kitchen that I've been in charge of, well, after this realization, right, I make it sort of a point, for whether they sort of realize it or not, I'm, doing sort of this sort of work of being, for people to value the women in their life. And it's so funny because we say, oh, I love my mom, but then how do you treat women? So I think that we need to change and really work on the little valuing women more. I mean, we say ingredients. Well, like we are, when we're talking about, parents and families, if we valued that, why wouldn't we value the most important time when a new baby seed comes into this world? Like, what does, the most important time is to be, feeling that love and being with your mother. And, we make it very difficult for that to happen.
Beverly, do you think that you would talk a little bit about how difficult it was to find the recipients for Abundant Setting, and then how you kind of led us through that process?
Sure. Yeah. So, we raised the money. We were ready to like perform these meals, and I like would call up everyone in my network, her network. Hey, do you have anyone who works for you who's a working mom, who's in your kitchens? We'd love to support them with meal relief. And it was very difficult. We were on a search for a while, and then it popped up. I talked to Christine from Honey Butter, which led me to Becca, which led me to Erica, because they were friends. And then had talked to Cliff Rome from Peaches, and he knew someone from his program. But it was very difficult. So that's how few working moms are actually in this industry. We are quite a minority. And I wasn't in a place of ownership when I had my first son, but I was like in between. I had already been an executive chef at one time. I was kind of like in the middle. I was taking a break, line cooking. And it was like, literally like everyone was asking, so your career's over basically. And then I was just really determined not to give up on my career just because I became pregnant. And, but it was very difficult. I did everything. I didn't work for someone who had any maternal policies. I didn't work for anyone who could even like, I could talk to about it. Our wages were quite low in the beginning, like with me and my husband, we struggled. So I really can sympathize for those people who don't have access to open their own place, like, and have kids. At the same time, what kind of opened my eyes was this whole night care system that because I was making enough, although before we were opening Parachute to qualify for Medicaid program. And there was a bunch of home daycares, home night cares that I was able to work till 10 o'clock and pick up my son. And this is pre-kindergarten. So I definitely think between birth and like when they're very young to like 5, like, and you're trying to make your way up the line and work in restaurants and get that chef position is very, very, very difficult. And I found that support, and it made me really wonder about how we could think about childcare in a different way, or night care that's more accessible. It was like $20 a day to put my child in. I've become like somewhat over successful by crossing the $31,000 threshold as a family, and I don't qualify for that kind of childcare help. I'm also in a place in my life where like I miss my kids and I don't want to see them be away from them all day long. from like 9 to 10 o'clock. And so there is just a lot of like, it's complex. But I do think that there is, if someone's figured out how to take a 10-minute ride to outer space, I think we can put our heads together to figure out how we can support more working moms and families. I think it's crazy to me what we put our value on in our society. But there's actually studies that show if we don't really address these issues, the impact on maternal and participation in workforce is going to have a dire economic problem on our country. And it's just also, as an industrial country, being the 37th, we rank like 35 out of 37 in terms of industrial countries of how we have these support systems in place, which to me is kind of like with America being number one, and we pride ourselves in being number one in everything, kind of sucks to be number 35 in that area. So I think there just needs to be discussions. Yes, like, I'm starting a parental policy as well, and I'm creating a policy, but it's like, talking to my HR person, I'm like the only one in the whole restaurant groups that they have that's actually starting that. That shows you it's like 0.001% like are even at this point where they can offer parental policies and leaves. But I think it's important to have the conversation. We're also one of the only industries, that have a sub-minimum wage in place, that we count on our customers to make up for the wages for our service workers, which also plays into devaluing cost of food and service. And so we're making changes there as well. So there's definitely a lot of consumer education, valuing women, valuing, the way laws are made is with men in place, men who made those decisions. And if a woman was in place, like Diana has said, I feel like we would have more thoughtfulness behind our policies, both culturally and through the restaurant industry. But even just being more open and to educate ourselves on these issues is a starting point, I feel, where restaurants really need to make an effort to include women in the conversation. Yeah, our second round, we found them actually a connection through Inspiration Kitchens. These were women that graduated from Inspiration's culinary program. And I'm just really excited that our program really supports women everywhere, in all scales of we are really like addressing the compoundness of a lot of other factors, which include also, people of color and how that and being in neighborhoods that are underserved, to all the whole spectrum of all the problems that women are facing right now.
There's so many great points that you all have brought up. Are there any other things that you think that we as a society need to look at, and for us for everyone in the restaurant industry, any kind of final thoughts from any of our panelists here? What else, even if it's a small thing? What else can we do?
Childcare is a big issue for our industry, that we need access to childcare at night. And it would be wonderful if the Abundance setting were to receive a partnership where we could get grant money to help our working mothers get childcare. We need to be able to have access for all of us in the industry. That I remember a conversation that I had with another woman chef, and she was saying that, she didn't have a place to take her kids, so how is she going to work? How is she going to work that night? Because she didn't have a place. And it's that simple. If you don't have a place or a safe space for your child to be, that you can feel comfortable, how are you going to come to work at night?
There's a question that was what advice do you have for young women or mothers hoping to pursue a career in the culinary industry?
Yeah, I would love to hear the advice that this group has. Why don't we close things off with everyone giving your one piece of advice for mothers, or or for fathers who are in the industry, and what they can do to get through this.
I would say, don't be afraid to ask for help.
Yeah, I think advocating for yourself is extremely important. Knowing what you need to make your work life and your personal life successful, and then don't be afraid to, approach your employers and ask for that, because you never know what they're going to say until you ask them. They may be willing to do whatever you need to do, but you don't know until you ask. So
Other thoughts? I'll start calling on people. Julie?
I mean, I think in terms of advice, for young chefs, it's interesting just because I think with COVID in the past couple of years, and a lot of the culinary schools couldn't do what they were doing in the past and give people the opportunities to do stages and things that are so important, for people when they're just starting out with their careers. I think that's been a big loss that we've had. I don't know if anyone else has experienced that, but for the bakery world, that's a huge loss. To not be able to have those people come in and work. I think doing your research on who you're going to interview with and who you're going to apply for is really important. Understanding kind of what their mission and philosophies are, and as a business, being able to communicate those missions and philosophies to people appropriately and authentically, so that they know kind of where you're coming from. I think having that communication with staff and with potential employees is so important. And knowing what they're getting into and having a support network outside of work is so vital, I think. I think it's probably really hard for a person who's just starting in the culinary field to move to a new city and not know anyone and then start a family. Like, I can't even imagine what that's like. So I think, kind of knowing what you're getting into and where you're going and who's going to support you is super important.
Deanna, what advice do you have?
Funny, usually I'm not at a loss for words. Usually I talk a lot. So, and the last thing that she just said was, that's totally what happened to me. I moved to a different city and started a family, and what I did then, I mean, I guess I would do the same. I would say that definitely research to see if there's anybody that is like you. And again, this is why I'm like, taking a look at it from a perspective of like how that happened to me, like I didn't have any, we just moved like maybe a year and a half in, and moving back was not really an option, nor did I want to do that. So, I mean, I think now there's a lot more resources in a sense of you can, things like what Beverly, Abundance has created, things like that. There's a lot more now, which I think that is very, very helpful. I mean, if I would have loved to have something like this and now you do get to see more women chefs. I mean, maybe it's just because funny enough, maybe it's just because, so happens to be the women chefs that I do know are all restaurant owners, but which I don't think is by coincidence. The advice really is I think that one thing that I always did that I wish that I didn't do was I feel like I sort of thought that I had to drop my femininity to be in the kitchen. And I think that having a child and being like motherhood actually gave it back to me and it almost has become my superpower, because I have, I think that I changed so much into a different level of when I cook, because of being pregnant, giving life, I feel like gave just a whole new different perspective to me on cooking and life. And so I would say, because I know that you don't have to defeminize yourself or, be like, oh, I'm not going to desexualize yourself, because to fit in, I'd say to be yourself, to ask questions, and to know that you're not alone.
Thank you. Thank you. Darnell, any thoughts from you?
Yeah, I would say really asking questions is a big one, but I would also say seek mentorship. In addition to that, it kind of goes hand in hand. So like mentorship plus inspiration, I'm very inspired by other chefs, and I have over, not only in this industry, but when I was in the hotel industry, I have reached out to other chefs as well, just to simply that, just to seek mentorship from them. I will say getting into this industry, as far as just the restaurant industry, in my opinion, I think it's very important for you to also kind of dive in and see what other restaurants are doing. And that could just be as simply as just going out to eat once a week or different things like that. Just kind of be visual and try to take something from every experience that you get. The other thing is, I think that if you're getting into the industry, at least in the beginning, that maybe you need to kind of find out what inspires you and what inspired you to want to be in this industry. And when you do, if you may already know that, but sometimes you have to dig deep so you can figure out, like, do I just love food, or is there another reason that I want to be in this industry? Or so once you figure out what inspires you, I think you should tap into that and continue to pursue it.
Thank you for that. Rick, any final thoughts of advice you have?
I think he left. He put something in the notes. He typed some advice in.
Yeah, he typed it.
Okay. Okay. And let me see. Beverly, Sarah, any final comments?
Mine was ask for help. I really feel very strongly that, we have, you have access to almost all of us on that platform to get advice, to have a mentor, to step forward and say what you need. If women don't stand up and say what they need, things are not going to change. So even if your employer isn't somebody that you feel is open to it, the ask is important if you can do it. Okay, and Beverly, you're at.
All right. Well, I'll also quickly read what Rick wrote. I'm so sorry I have to go. My advice, stage at the place you want to work to see if it is supportive of everyone on the staff. Work to find the best place you fit in. And he said, again, sorry to leave. But again, going back to Julie's message is like, if they're allowing you to shadow, and I shadowed at Chef Sarah's place when I was younger. And I really was inspired by her, and seeing women in leadership actually made me feel like I could do it too. And it's really as simple as that, like surround yourself with the people that support you, surround yourself with people who motivate you, surround yourself people who are positive in your life, and don't surround yourself and move away from situations that are people that demotivate you, and kitchens that might not feel supportive. And it's a difficult industry in that, with the hours and working holidays and the push, but always come back to finding joy and fulfillment in what we do. And you will find a way. Where there's a will, there's a way. And then I think that it's even easier now to access, a support network, and you don't have to be alone. You can start right here. You can go to that portal and ask, find one of us. And if we can't help you, we'll find someone else, or we'll find 10 people who can help you. It really is like that. Is just don't be afraid to get a mentor, or people to support you through the process. It's unbelievably really helpful in this career in navigating all the different options you have. So I hope that was a positive thing.
That is a positive thing. And I want to thank you and Sarah for all the work that you're doing with Abundance Setting, and encourage anyone who's watching this to go to the website, to reach out, even if you're just kind of contemplating what your future looks like professionally and personally. Don't be afraid to reach out to these people and ask for help. The chefs on this panel and the other chefs who have been supportive of the organization are here because they want to help and they want to make parenting better for the next group of people. So please reach out and do that. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, or whenever you're watching this. And thank you to Beverly and Sarah and Seth from Abundance Setting for having all of us. This has been a really great conversation.
Thank you so much, everyone. It's been amazing and inspiring. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Chandra, for your help.
Thank
Always.
you.